there are so many people who lack joy. They don't have joy. When I look at human beings today, when I look at men and women, boys and girls, they are totally unhappy. And then they get a joy, but it doesn't last because it's not the real joy. You know, Paul said to rejoice in the Lord. And if you don't rejoice in the Lord, most likely you won't ever rejoice. That's the only place we can find real joy is in God. And we now have people who are looking for joy in every place but with God. You don't really hear people talking about that anymore. Rejoice in the Lord. And so today what I want to do is show you how to do it. Exactly how to do it. And once you get it, it never leaves. No matter what the situation is, what the circumstance is, you still have that joy because it's in God. I was talking to some guys yesterday, was invited to this meeting. It lasted about an hour and a half. And guys from the age of 12 to about 21, 22. And it was absolutely sad to see young people like that so unhappy and doing all that they can do with the world around them to become happy. One of the things that we talked about, they asked me, should men have sex before marriage? I said, no, you should not do it. I highly recommend that you don't do it. And they could not accept that. Even the little young kids, they have been told that if you don't have sex, you're not a man. And that real men have sex before marriage. And they are all into it, and they are addicted to it like an alcoholic is to alcohol. And they can't even imagine not doing it. And that's because they're so addicted to it now. Can you imagine what's going to happen to those guys by the time they're in their mid-20s and 30s? And not one of those guys, unless they make a major change, they're not going to be good husbands. They're not going to be good fathers. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to have children out of wedlock because they have already lost control. And one thing I can guarantee you, to the ladies, any man that has sex with you or anybody before marriage will cheat on you after marriage. Because a man who has sex before marriage is out of control. He doesn't have self-control. It's like an alcoholic or drug addict. Right now, off the top of my head, I can only think of 3 men that I know for sure have not cheated on their wives. Now, the others I have not asked, so I don't know. I just believe some. There's more that I believe haven't, but I just don't know. I happen to know, but every other guy I know have cheated on their wives. And that's because they were already sexually out of control before they got married. And it doesn't work. But the world is pushing that now. And they're pushing it on kids as young as, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And the parents are allowing their children to be traumatized in that manner. They don't protect their children from that. You have no idea what it does to a man to have sex before marriage. You have no idea the impact that it has on him when that happens. Really, that's why it's best to tell your kids, no, don't do it until marriage, no matter what the world says. Also, what I've noticed, due to the lack of joy, we have this election thing going on, right? With the presidential election happening right now. And I have never seen so much bitterness and anger in a presidential election in all my born days. Friends are turning on friends. Family members are turning on family members. Church members turning on church members. It all depends on what side you're on. Just anger and bitterness and hatefulness. People are talking about each other, calling each other awful names over a stupid president. Meaning that's not worth fighting over. You can have a different opinion. You can decide who you want, but let the other person allow them to decide who they want as well. But I've never seen such bitterness. And not just from the liberal Democrats. It's coming from the Republicans, the conservatives, and everybody. Because I've already made up my mind who I'm going to vote for. And I have a lot of good friends who and they're out there in the political world, and they are not for the person I'm for. But I don't hold that against them at all. I don't feel anything about it. I think it's fun when we discuss it. After the discussion, we still walk away tight friends. Nothing changed because I have joy. And my joy is not based on anybody or anything. And so we can absolutely disagree. We can have a dragged down fight. And when the fight is over, the friendship is still tight. But you got to have joy in order for that to happen. This election is so interesting to me because a lot of things that were hidden are now coming to the forefront. It reminds me somewhat of when Barack Obama first ran for president, and a lot of white people thought that the black friends they had were good friends, that they were church-going folks, Christian. They had been going to church all their lives together, and Barack Obama ran, and the white friends would disagree with him, with Barack Obama, and right away the black friends would turn on them. They did not give their white friends permission to disagree with Barack Obama. And so that means that the friendship was all fake all along. They called him racist, you're just doing this because he's black. And there were so many white Americans that I met around the country just in tears because they were shocked at how their black friends turned on them. I wasn't in shock though, because I'm telling you, you got to turn back to God. And then when this kind of stuff happens, it destroys friendship. That's because there's no joy. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Because whatever you look for out there to find joy in, it ends up destroying you. It will not last. One thing I realized too is that men have lost their knowledge, the knowledge of their relationship with God. They don't remember how it used to be with them and God. They don't even remember a relationship with Him. And because they don't remember it, it's not working for them. I want to, before I take your question, I want to give you a good example from the Bible of the way that you would handle life if you had joy. Satan attacked Job right away, and Job ended up losing everything. He lost all of his wealth, his land, the cows, everything. Then he lost his children. And it was happening back to back. As soon as a bad incident happened, another one would happen. Before he could even deal with the first one, the second incident, somebody would come and say, you just lost your kids. Your son just died, blah, 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 right? And so Job realized that it was God allowing it to happen. Because he knew that he couldn't think of anything he had done. He had not sinned as far as he could tell. And so there was nothing he had done. So he knew God was allowing this to happen to him. And in that, and you can read it later, I think it's chapter 1. I forgot. It's chapter 1, huh? Oh, yeah. 1 through 21.
There was once a man in the land of Uz called Job, a sound and honest man who feared God and shunned evil. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. And he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 she-donkeys, and many servants besides. This man was the most prosperous of all the sons of the East. Does that sound?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was the custom of his sons to hold banquets in one another's houses in turn, and to invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. Once each series of banquets was over, Job would send for them to come and be purified, and at dawn on the following day he would make a burnt offering for each of them. Perhaps, Job would say, my sons have sinned and in their heart blasphemed. So that was what Job used to do each time. One day, when the sons of God came to attend on Yahweh, among them came Satan. So Yahweh said to Satan, where have you been? Prowling about on the earth, he answered, roaming around there. So Yahweh asked him, "Did you pay any attention to my servant Job? There is no one like him on the earth, a sound and honest man who fears God and shuns evil." "Yes," said Satan, "but Job is not God-fearing for nothing, is he? Have you not put a wall round him and his house and all his domain? You have blessed all he undertakes, and his flocks throng the countryside. But stretch out your hand and lay a finger on his possessions. Then I warrant you, he will curse you to your face." "Very well," Yahweh said to Satan. "All he has is in your power, but keep your hands off his person." So Satan left the presence of Yahweh. On the day when Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking in their eldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job. "Your oxen," he said, "were at the plow, with the donkeys grazing at their side, when the Sabaeans swept down on them and carried them off, and put the servants to the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you." He had not finished speaking when another messenger arrived. "The fire of God," he said, "has fallen from heaven and burnt the sheep and shepherds to ashes. I alone have escaped to tell you." He had not finished speaking when another messenger arrived. "The Chaldeans," he said, "3 bands of them have raided the camels and made off with them, and put the servants to the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you." He had not finished speaking when another messenger arrived. "Your sons and daughters," he said, "were eating and drinking at their eldest brother's house, when suddenly from the desert a gale sprang up, and it battered all 4 corners of the house, which fell in on the young people. They are dead. I alone have escaped to tell you." Then Job stood up, tore his robe, and shaved his head. Then falling to the ground, he prostrated himself and said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return again. Yahweh gave, Yahweh has taken back. Blessed be the name of Yahweh."
Isn't that amazing? So Job lost everything, and rather than tripping out, he found his joy in God. And that's the kind of relationship that God wants us to have with him. And it's already set up. Thank you so much, Brenda. Very good. It's already set up. So instead of Job like, "Oh, Lord, why is this happening? I don't believe in God anymore. I'm going to see a psychiatrist or get counseling and take some medication, or I'm going to commit suicide." He gave glory to God because he knew God was allowing that to happen. His faith was not in his family. It was not in all the things that he had. His faith was in God. And he stayed away from sin. Today, the world is pushing sin. If you don't sin, there's something wrong with you, they say. But Job stayed away from that. And as a result of staying away from that, God blessed him. And his faith, his joy was in God. And I've seen relationships fall apart and the people fall apart. "My husband cheated on me. I'm about to die." Your husband cheated on you, that's him. It's wrong, but let him pay the price for that. Your joy should be in God. And the same thing with husbands. Your joy have to be in him. But as long as you're sinning, as long as you think that the world is more important, you're not going to be able to handle anything because your joy is in the wrong thing. It really is. You got to turn that around. That's why everything is so miserable today. It's hard to find joyful people. Have you noticed that? They're like jealous of you. I noticed in the black community, if a black man or a woman escaped the plantation of the Democratic Party or the plantation of that black mentality, they get over being black and they go and work and they become independent and they earn their way. They're not mad at anyone. They're not into the color thing. The rest of the black will go after you. You're Uncle Tom, you're a sellout, you're the N-word, you this or you that or blah, blah, blah. They'll like go after you, like hardcore go after you. You're acting like the white people. I can't believe you're going to stand up for white people. And you're not standing up for white people, you're standing up for what is right. I'm telling you, you can live a life not being into your color or anything. You're being into what is right. You don't even care about the color thing. But they'll go after you. And that's because they have no joy. Otherwise, I'm telling you, if you don't switch the way things are going, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it, all right? But if you don't switch the way things are going in your life, if you don't take a different course, you're going to end up unhappy, dead, diseased. No matter how much money you have, you're not going to have peace. Your kids' lives are going to be miserable. They're stuck on you. You got to change the course that you're on and overcome the world. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Yes, ma'am.
How would you define joy in the way that you're using it?
That's a very good question. How, define joy the way you see it right now.
It's almost like maybe peace or something, because you're talking about how Job had joy, and these people kind of, through the sufferings and the tribulation.
Right.
Maybe like a peace or something that's undisturbable, but not like an emotional high.
That's a real good question. You want to respond to that? Yeah. Oh, okay. Do you rejoice in the Lord?
Yes, I do, but I thought of kind of a fun way to put it. Joy is the opposite of fun. You can see a lot of people having fun. Oh, we're having so much fun.
Right.
They're not joyful.
That's a very, yeah.
Right? You have a bunch of people, they want you to have the fun they're having, which isn't fun. It's pure hell.
You're right about that, because the joy I'm talking about, you could be alone and still have it.
Exactly.
You could be at a party and still have it. Your family and your friends and the world could be mean to you, and you still have it. People can talk about you, and they will, and you still have it. Nothing can take it away once God gives it to you. Like Job lost everything, right? But his faith in God did not change.
You can say, you can be joyful that you missed having that much fun.
Yeah.
Dodge that bullet.
That's right.
So it's kind of interesting. So it's a state of being, right? Whereas fun or joy or the other stuff, joy seems to be a state of being. The other stuff is you got to do things. You have to be distracted.
Yeah.
You have to have other people around you. You have to have booze. You got to have drugs. You got to get whatever
You
got to
have to be well educated.
You have to have rather than be.
Yeah. You have to have 4 or 5 degrees.
Yeah. Well, there's that too. There's that too.
And that's what the world uses. It's just amazing what the world is using in order to find joy. It's amazing to me that the churches in this country, the Christians in this country, have allowed Satan roaming the earth. Remember how Satan roaming the earth? So he's roaming the earth here, working through people, destroying people, and telling them, okay, now go destroy the family. Now go and destroy the church. And the churches will just let it happen. The mentality of the church today is no different than Black Lives Matter or the National Organization of Women Who Hate Men. They have the same mentality. And they're not set apart anymore from the world. They have become the world. And as a result of that, that's why all this other stuff is coming in, as it's done or is happening in Europe and other places, and overtaking us, because people don't believe that there is sin. They don't believe that there is good and evil. They don't even want to talk about that anymore. I mean, what a mind-blowing thing that Satan could do to convince you that there is no evil. He has convinced people that. And if you want to overtake someone, convince them or something like that. You can drive them wherever you want to. And that's what's happening. It's a spiritual battle. We are serving God or we are serving Satan. There is no you. There is no in-between. There is no gray area. You are being influenced. You are not making your own decisions. And if you want all this suffering to end with you and your family and other people, you got to change. And you got to take control of your own life. And believe me, the world will come after you. Your family members will turn on you, but it won't interfere with your joy. Only thing that would do is allow you to see what's been there all along, and you didn't see it. You're like, wow, I thought my sister really liked me. I thought my friend liked me, but they really don't. If you don't have a relationship with God, your relationship with human beings are phony. It's only nice when it's going your way. If they just, like, look at this election. Anger is of your father, the devil. I don't care what anyone says. Anger is of your father, the devil. The joy I'm talking about, it can only be given to us by God. And what he does, he separates you from the world. I mean, it's a separation meaning that you don't have the same need for everything. You don't have that same need for friendship. You don't have that same need for money, or relationship with it. You're not worried about if you're going to lose it or not. Or you don't have that same need for your environment, your family members, and things like that. And so it's like he separates you from that, and then he take away all the conflict and the things that connect you to the world around you, and you just have a peace. You have a joy that it's just absent of conflict, and it's void of need, and a disassociation or lack of identity with your outer environment. Somehow or another, he changed that without you realizing it's gone until you realize you don't have it anymore. Until you're about to lose something and you realize you're not freaking out over that anymore. It's not like that anymore. You have changed without realizing. It's almost like God put an invisible wall around you, your soul or something, so that the world around you can no longer affect you. It can't affect you anymore. You don't have the fear. You don't have the doubt. You don't have the worry. And if something did go wrong, instead of freaking out, you do with Job, you rejoice in God because you know that your Father is only allowing this to happen for your sake and for the good of you. And it's not like a personal loss. You know your Father is doing it because he loves you. So you identify with your Father now and not with the world around you. It's so amazing. And all of us can have it, but you got to change the way you're doing it if you want it. And he'll take it away. You can't change yourself with this either because it's spiritual. There is no reason that we as human beings should be suffering, insecure, angry, and jealous, and envy, and mad at somebody because they're not voting for the person you're voting for, or mad at your friends because they don't want to play with you anymore, or worried about money, or we shouldn't be worried about all that stuff because Christ had put everything back in order. Everything we need, everything we want is already there. We just need to change our focus. The focus got to change.
Tell me if you think what was lost in the world and is being lost in this country is what our founding fathers, who were deeply religious, said when they indicated that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights.
That's right.
Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the government gets in the way of those things.
That's right. And the reason that is being lost is because of the family being destroyed. Because the family, in my opinion, is created in the image of God. You have the head, you have the family. And when you destroy that man, you lose the Constitution, you lose everything. You lose freedom. And Eva understands that. That's why I always go after the head of the family. You remove that Christ out of the way, make him look stupid, dumb, turn him into a cheater by teaching him at 12 you can have sex, or telling him this or that, miseducating him, weaken the man, then they can take away our freedom. And that's what's happened. I saw it happen with black people. When I was growing up, it was not like this with black people. There was a respect for one another. There was no hating whitey. Even though we lived separately from each other, when we saw each other, we greeted one another. We were not hating. We were not thinking about, oh, you white. None of that stuff. But when they removed the black father away from the home, everything fell apart. And that's what they're doing now. They destroy the family, and they can corrupt the wife and the children. It's so easy. because the wife needs her husband. And the wife needs the children, need the husband to help with the children. The husband needs the wife. And they know that. And it's so unfortunate, but the country let it happen. We bring our enemies into the country now, under the name of refugees. But we let the children of devil tell us, oh, you're discriminating, blah, blah, blah. And we say, oh, okay, I don't want to be seen as someone who discriminates. And let it happen, because we don't have joy. So we have to give in to the world. You have to always be mindful of God. You have to always be mindful of Him. And when I say be mindful of God, I don't mean walk around all day thinking about God. Because I can see some people doing that. Oh, what you think about? Oh, think about God. You got a life to do. You got to go to work. You got to clean your house. You got to cook, iron, whatever you do. So I don't mean that way. Here's what I mean. You got to see that you're wrong, and then you have to pray. You have to stay in prayer. I recommend a silent prayer, meaning be still and know God. But you can't do that, submit to that until you know that you are wrong. That morally, spiritually, that you are wrong. And this will be with you and God. You don't have to tell anyone about it. But as soon as you can see that you're wrong, that you're playing God with your life, you're making decisions, you're judging your fellow man, you're angry, you're jealous, you're envious, all that stuff going on with you. When you can admit that, and that's what it means to confess your sins and He'll make you free. The moment you can admit that you're wrong, things will start to change. You submit to prayer, and God wants us to pray without ceasing, meaning that just be aware of Him. Don't be so lost and caught up with what you're doing. Just be aware of Him. And the first thing He can do what He wants, but what will happen, He will cause you to forgive, to repent, forgive. Before you enter into the kingdom of God, you must forgive. You're not going to be able to enter into this place because the kingdom of heaven is inside of us and above. But for now, while on earth, we can live from within. But you got to submit to prayer and then allow it to happen. He would change you. He would switch. He would take one nature away from you, that nature of anger. He would take it away from you and give you a brand new nature. He would give you His identity. And what's going to start happening then, you're going to start to remember your Father, your relationship with God, as you did when you were a little kid. Kids know God until they're traumatized and they forget. Trauma causes you to forget. But when you forgive, you start to remember again. I'm telling you, it's amazing, because now you're going to grow up with your Father. And when your enemy come after you, when they try to do all this mess they're doing to the country and stuff, you're going to have the know-how, the courage to stand up and fight back. And it doesn't matter what they call you. Uncle Tom, sell out, you hate men, you hate women, you hate yourself, you hate your color, you're the head coon, you're the kingdom coon. You're going to look at them and have compassion for them, because you're going to see them in a different way. You'll see the physical person, but you will see the spirit that's driving that person, and you will have compassion for that person. And that doesn't mean you don't stand up and fight back. You just won't hate them, because you know it's not them, it's something else that made a home in them. And one day you just realize your joy is now in God. Because you find yourself not worried about anything, not afraid of losing things. You're not worried about what you have and don't have. Who is doing this and you want it. That would change by itself, and life would begin. Isn't that nice? I'm telling you, I didn't know this until it started happening to me. I admitted that I was wrong, and the only way that I was, 28 years ago, the only way that I was able to admit that I was wrong, I had to ask God to let me see myself, because I couldn't even see that I was wrong. When you're wrong, you can't see that you're wrong. You always think it's somebody else. You made me mad. You made me do this. It's you. It's not them. So I had to ask God to let me see myself. He allowed me to see myself. And when I saw that, He caused me to repent. And my world changed. And all the years have gone by, I'm really not the same person anymore. I can hardly remember being the way I used to be. And yet I take no credit for it. None. Because it's all spiritual. When people, they don't want to play with you, you don't care. You have compassion for that person. You love being alone. Because when you are alone, you reflect on God. So when you're going through your day, don't get so lost in what you're doing. Try to stay present. I know sometimes you have to go in your mind and do your little job, but come back into the awareness of God. And then at night, as you all know, at night, it's the benediction, right? It's the end of the day, end of the service, benediction time. You know about that at night, right? Why y'all looking like that? What do you think night is for? Partying? Benediction at night, meaning that you reflect and you pray. You reflect on the day and you reflect on how challenges came and you were able to overcome them or you were not able to overcome them. You just kind of quietly reflect, have your dinner, read a book or whatever you do, talk on the phone for a minute. But at night, it's the end of the day. Tomorrow's a brand new day. Everything that happened today exists no more. It's benediction time. So at night, what I recommend, you wind down, reflect, have your prayer, and go to bed. And if you start practicing that every day, your world will change, and your relationship will be with your Father, and your life will be good. Because it will be based on Him. Any question?
It isn't what's out there that you have to have. It's what's inside that you can be. But then you're not in control of that either, right? Be all you can be, yeah, but it's not all up to you.
Yep.
That kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. And the quiet moments are wonderful moments.
Heaven
when you go
earth.
through the worst time of all in your life, and it's painful,
Yep.
that quiet moment at night is one of the best you can go through.
That's right.
But wow, you don't ask for it.
That's why if you start now, before a problem comes, when the storm comes, you're ready. You know how to relax and go through it because your joy is in God, and you know that whatever's going to happen, just think about it. Nobody created God, right? He's uncreated. And so if nobody created Him, and He created heaven and earth, and then He created us, and then He blew life into our bodies, why in the world would you take a second to worry about anything? You have no control over anything anyway. He is in control of everything. But the deceiver roaming the earth want you to doubt that. And that's why he's always telling you little things. Oh, you're going to die from that. Or you're not going to have food tomorrow. Or whatever he tells you, right? You have to resist temptation because temptation is evil. But God will shine the light on it so you can see how to resist temptation. Nothing of this you could do yourself. That's why I'm encouraging you to pray silently so you can become conscious of God. You want His mind. You want a renewed mind. A renewed mind. It's a spiritual battle. It's not physical. And you got to, as an individual, submit yourself to God. You got to let go and let God. And don't let the children of Satan or anyone stop you. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't know what the next moment is going to bring. But I'm having the time of my life fighting hell. It's so much fun because I know God is with me. And I give Him the credit for it. And He needs us because He's trying to create love through us. And so He needs us so that He can create love through us. That's why He created us. And so you got to learn, you got to let this anger go so love can come through you and fight your battles with love. Martin Luther King Jr. said, overcome evil with good. Speak up, but don't hate. And if somebody don't want to be in your life, let them go. And wish them well. Don't go and talk about them. Pray for them. They have a right not to be in your life. They have a right not to like you. They have a right not to vote for Trump or Hillary or Hillary's mama. Give people that right to do that. It doesn't even make sense to be mad at someone because they have a different opinion. You know what I mean? You set the higher example, and maybe one day they'll come around if your way is right. But a lot of friendships are breaking up because of that. And it doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense. It never was friendship in the beginning. So pray, watch at night, the end of the day. Don't just run home in the evening, eat some food, drink some wine, get drunk, and go to bed. Keep your mind. You want to be mindful of God. And I'm not talking about you hear words in your head about God. I'm telling you that you should be conscious of Him, the awareness of God. And He'll take care of you. And they're pushing it on kids as young as, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. And the parents are allowing their children to be traumatized in that manner. They don't protect their children from that. You have no idea what it does to a man to have sex before marriage. You have no idea the impact that it has on him when that happens. Really, that's why it's best to tell your kids, no, don't do it until marriage, no matter what the world says. Also, what I've noticed, due to the lack of joy, we have this election thing going on, right? With the presidential election happening right now. And I have never seen so much bitterness and anger in a presidential election in all my born days. Friends are turning on friends. Family members are turning on family members, church members turning on church members. It all depends on what side you're on. Just anger and bitterness and hatefulness. People are talking about each other, calling each other awful names, because they're so addicted to it now. Can you imagine what's going to happen to those guys by the time they're in their mid-20s and 30s? And not one of those guys, unless they make a major change, they're not going to be good husbands. They're not going to be good fathers. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to have children out of wedlock because they have already lost control. And one thing I can guarantee you, to the ladies, any man that has sex with you or anybody before marriage will cheat on you after marriage. Because a man who has sex before marriage is out of control. He doesn't have self-control. It's like an alcoholic or drug addict. Right now, off the top of my head, I can only think of 3 men that I know for sure have not cheated on their wives. Now, the others I have not asked, so I don't know. I just believe some. There's more that I believe haven't, but I just don't know. I happen to know, but every other guy I know have cheated on their wives. And that's because they were already sexually out of control before they got married. And it doesn't work. But the world is pushing that now. A stupid president, meaning that's not worth fighting over. You can have a different opinion. You can decide who you want, but let the other person allow them to decide who they want as well. But I've never seen such bitterness. And not just from the liberal Democrats. It's coming from the Republicans, the conservatives, and everybody. Because I've already made up my mind who I'm going to vote for. And I have a lot of good friends who and they're out there in the political world. And they are not for the person I'm for. But I don't hold that against them at all. I don't feel anything about it. I think it's fun when we discuss it. After the discussion, we still walk away tight friends. Nothing changed. Because I have joy. And my joy is not based on anybody or anything. And so we can absolutely disagree. We can have a drag down fight, and when the fight is over, the friendship is still tight. But you got to have joy in order for that to happen. And I never leaves. No matter what the situation is, what the circumstance is, you still have that joy because it's in God. I was talking to some guys yesterday, was invited to this meeting. It lasted about an hour and a half. And guys from the age of 12 to about 21, 22. And it was absolutely sad to see young people like that so unhappy and doing all that they can do with the world around them to become happy. One of the things that we talked about, they asked me, should men have sex before marriage? I said, no, you should not do it. I highly recommend that you don't do it. And they could not accept that. Even the little young kids, they have been told that if you don't have sex, you're not a man. And that real men have sex before marriage. And they are all into it, and they are addicted to it like an alcoholic is to alcohol. And they can't even imagine not doing it. And that's there are so many people who lack joy. They don't have joy. When I look at human beings today, when I look at men and women, boys and girls, they are totally unhappy. And then they get a joy, but it doesn't last because it's not the real joy. You know, Paul said to rejoice in the Lord. And if you don't rejoice in the Lord, most likely you won't ever rejoice. That's the only place we can find real joy is in God. And we now have people who are looking for joy in every place but with God. You don't really hear people talking about that anymore. Rejoice in the Lord. And so today what I want to do is show you how to do it. Exactly how to do it. And once you get it,